What's up, Alabama fans? It's Andrew Bone with BamaInsider.com. Hope you're all doing well this evening. Glad you decided to tune in and listen to the recruiting report that we have this evening. Um, yeah, a little different than what we've been doing the last few Tuesdays. This isn't going to be a call-in show tonight. It's going to be basically just me talking. Now, you can ask me a question in the chat, and I'm going to answer you. So feel free to shoot in some questions, and I'll be more than happy to take questions and answer them to the best of my knowledge this evening. But once again, this evening we're just going to talk recruiting. Obviously, talk about what's going on, what's been happening lately with the Crimson Tide's recruiting class. Obviously, things have kind of slowed down in terms of taking visits during during the coronavirus. Nothing's happening this summer, so all we're going to really see is commitments happening. What's up from ATL? What up, ATL? Glad you joined in this evening. So let me talk a little bit about some of the big news that's kind of going on in the Alabama circles of the world right now, and then I'll take a few recruiting questions. Not a few, several. So I'm gonna be in here for a while. So you guys and ladies, shoot me some questions tonight, and I'd be more than happy to answer. So let's get things going. I guess first off, what everybody wants to know about is JC Latham. The big time offensive tackle out of IMG Academy, one of the top offensive tackles in the country, looking like he's probably going to be making a decision here pretty soon. How soon is that going to be? Now, I posted on Bama Insider the other day. I said I'd be really surprised if we got to Wednesday and didn't see a commitment happen. It's Tuesday night, so let's see what happens tomorrow. Maybe we'll see a commitment. Maybe he drags it on a little bit further, but I do expect a commitment to happen at least within the next few days. Be surprised if it lasted any longer than that. But JC Latham out of IMG Academy, originally from Wisconsin, but his mom lives in Chicago. Been in Chicago during this whole COVID-19 situation, so that's where he's been. But everybody kind of has been assuming that it's Ohio State with him for the longest time, but put in a prediction a couple of days ago that I believe it's going to be Alabama. I think we've seen a lot of people starting to put those predictions in for the Crimson Tide. I think Alabama just done a tremendous job recruiting him. Led by Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach. I think this could be a really special offensive line class. And guess what? There's 0 offensive line commitments right now, but I think Alabama's in great shape with several guys moving forward. If they can get Latham this week on board, that's a big step. You get Tommy Brockermeyer, James Brockermeyer, the Brockermeyer twins out of Texas. Those are 3 really good offensive linemen. And then, you got the potential to add, a couple more guys down the road. I think it can be a really special offensive line class. But as of right now, I definitely believe JC Latham is going to end up committing to Alabama. That's my firm prediction. We'll see if that happens this week. Now, kind of what we've seen over the course of the last, couple weeks now, especially with the NCAA coming out and saying that the recruiting dead period keeps getting extended. It got extended again last week to the end of July. So what that means is kids are not going to be on campuses this summer. That's going to suck for kids. It's going to suck for college coaches because college coaches aren't going to be able to have those guys on campus. Not only to let them visit and tour the facilities and meet with the coaching staff and stuff like that, but it's also a great evaluation tool. Even for the 5-star type kids, the guys who have been heavily recruited for a long time, they still bring those guys in, let them work out. Maybe they're not 5 stars. Maybe they're not 4 stars. Maybe the 3 stars aren't 3 stars. Maybe those guys are 5 stars, and maybe those guys those guys earn a scholarship offer. So, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So, what we've kind of been seeing over the last few weeks is we've been seeing more and more recruits, name their top 4, top 5. Finally kind of getting away from the top 13s and top 15s because those guys aren't going to be able to take those many trips during the summer. They're really going to have to narrow it down, visit the schools that are heavily recruiting them, that really want them, that they're really going to consider down the road because guess what? A lot of these guys that are putting out top 15s, top 20s that are about to be seniors in high school, they know that a lot of those schools aren't in the mix. They know kind of who they're really interested in by this point. And I expect them to, some of the guys who are still putting those lists out, I expect them to trim it down. But we have started to see more and more recruits trim their list of favorites down lately. I think we're going to see more and more guys make decisions here in the upcoming weeks. Obviously, we're going to see JC Latham make a decision here pretty soon, but there's just a lot going on. A lot going to go on over the course of the next few months, regardless of all these visits taking place. We're going to see a lot of guys making decisions, and then in the fall, once we get into the fall, we're going to see a lot of commitments taking visits elsewhere. A lot of guys that decided they wanted to go ahead and commit during the spring, or they wanted to go ahead and commit during the summer without taking visits elsewhere. We're going to see a lot of those guys take a ton of visits this fall. I'll be shocked if we don't see the majority of guys that are committed take visits. I just, a lot of this has been kind of robbed from them in terms of, enjoying their recruiting process. And I just certainly think that we're going to see a lot of kids take visits. Now, I've seen some different people say we're going to see more decommitments than ever before. Now, that may be the case, but I at least think we're going to see, a lot of kids take visits that are currently committed, to programs throughout the country, even some guys that are committed to Alabama. So what all has kind of gone on in the last week outside of JC Latham saying that he's going to make a decision? Now, we've seen a few top Alabama targets come out and say that, here are my top 5, here are my top 6 schools. Jeremiah Williams out of Ramsey High School in Birmingham, came out with his top 6 the other day, Alabama included. Linebacker is going to be very interesting for Alabama kind of moving forward because, they have 2 linebacker commitments, Deontay Lawson, Ian Jackson, both in-state guys. Jeremiah Williams, another in-state guy that they would love to add, but you got Kendrick Blackshire out of Texas, Xavier Sori out of Florida. You got Dallas Turner. A lot of big-time guys that could be making decisions, upcoming decisions in the next few months. So, something to kind of really keep an eye on. Keno Cote, who also named the top 5 last week. He's another big linebacker target. So, really kind of watching and see how many linebackers Alabama is going to end up taking in this class. I've been saying it's going to be around, 4 or 5 guys. They have 2. Do they get 2 more? Everybody kind of assumes as of right now that Kendrick Blackshire and Dallas Turner are leaning towards Alabama. You get those 2 guys on board, you got one of an outstanding linebacker class, but you also got potentially room for one more. There's a lot of guys that Alabama's recruiting that are out there. They feel like they've got a good chance to land. So we'll keep an eye on that, see if they can potentially fit 5 guys in the recruiting class. Now, we saw a couple guys actually get offered scholarships by Alabama last week, guys who were in the 2021 recruiting class. Prince Coley out of Tennessee, a linebacker. I think he's actually rated as an athlete right now, but had a great junior season, over 1,000 yards receiving, close to about 80 tackles on defense, but recruited mainly as a linebacker. So he's a guy that we're watching pretty closely. Luke Altmaier, who is a quarterback from Starkville High School in Mississippi, currently committed to Florida State. He's kind of come out and said that he's still very firm with Florida State, that he appreciates the offer from Alabama, but that is also something that we're going to continue to watch. I wouldn't say he's going to flip, but I think Alabama's going to have a chance to at least bring him in for a visit this fall. Just kind of some things that we're going to just have to let play out and see how things go. See if these guys end up visiting campus, see if they'll take an official visit, come in for a game during the fall, and then kind of go from there. But those are some of the guys that that we were talking about in terms of getting early offers before the before the COVID hit. These are guys that were going to potentially get offered during the summer as soon as they got to camp. Well, there's no camps, so these guys aren't getting scholarship offers. But anyway, that's kind of the bigger news that's going on now. I'm going to take a lot of questions tonight. I'm going to get to I see a bunch of these questions firing in, and hopefully that's going to answer a lot of the reasons why a lot of you tuned in tonight. You want to get the recruiting scoop. Well, kind of how I do a lot of my speaking events. I love taking questions. I'll take questions usually for about an hour at a lot of my speaking events, and usually talk for about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, and then the Q&A sessions go for about an hour. So you learn more information from the Q&A sessions. So I'm going to get to the Q&A session now, answer your questions, and keep firing them in. I mean, I'm here for a while, so ask me a question. I'll be more than happy to answer as best as I can. All right, at the top, we've got will there be official visits? Has the NCAA given coaches relief camps? There's no camps happening. There are going to be official visits. They're all going to be in the fall or after the football season. So plenty of that's coming. We'll have to kind of wait and see what the NCAA decides in terms of giving recruiting these coaches, college coaching staffs throughout the country extra time to recruit. We may not see a recruiting dead period. In the winter, I guess between the end of the football season up until January, you may see recruiting just go on nonstop. So we'll kind of wait and see how that goes. Let's see. Any update on the Brockermeyer twins? Nothing too crazy. James Brockermeyer came out last week. He's an offensive center in the Rivals 250. Tommy's twin brother. I was about to say his older brother, but Tommy's twin brother. He came out and said his top four was Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas. Now that's the same top four as Tommy. Tommy had a top five back in December, but that's the top four is the same. Not really sure when they're going to make a decision. Would not be surprised if we saw something happen before the season started. But as of right now, I have both of those guys predicted to Alabama. Would be kind of surprised if they ended up somewhere else at this point. Obviously, they've got the Texas connections. Father was an All-American there. They live in Fort Worth. Tons of pressure on them to stay home, but I think both of them will avoid that pressure and end up going to Alabama. All right, let's see. I got a feel that Bama is losing ground on Christian Leary, but making up a lot of ground on Malcolm Johnson. Christian Leary, for those that don't know, one of the top high school athletes in the country out of Orlando. Malcolm Johnson, another just fast blazer out of Virginia. Two guys that Alabama would love to add in this recruiting class, both wide receivers. I think Alabama would be happy with either one of those guys. If they can get both, that'd be great. But if they can get at least one of those guys, I think they'll be very happy. They obviously have two excellent wide receiver commitments right now in Ja'Cory Brooks and Ajay Hall. But if they really want to really want to add a speed guy in this class, and Malcolm Johnson, Christian Leary, two guys that they absolutely love. They, definitely recruiting both of them hard now. Starting to hear a little bit of buzz on Auburn with Christian Leary. Now, I know that probably surprises some people because it kind of seemed like it was an Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida battle for him. But I think he's going to stay a little bit closer to home. I think it, ends up coming down to Alabama, Florida, and Auburn for him. And then with Malcolm Johnson, he's got a top 8. I think we'll probably wait. We probably won't see anything happen until a little bit later on after he takes some visits this fall. But Alabama's definitely pushing hard for him. They really like him a lot. And like I said, I think they'll be happy with either one of those guys. I think Alabama gets one of those guys. I'm not ready to predict which one of them yet. But I do think they'll get at least one of those two between Malcolm Johnson and Christian Leary. All right. Is Alabama deep enough to absorb the loss of 2 transfers at wide receiver? I believe so. I think they got a lot of young talent, got a lot of young guys, good class coming in. And I think they'll be all right. There's probably a reason for those guys transferring. And, there's a lot of, young talent, and there's a lot of, guys coming back, especially, I guess your top 2 guys in Smitty and Jalen Waddle. Those guys are going to catch a lot of balls this fall. I think Alabama's going to be just fine at wide receiver. Michael asked about Amarius Mims, the 5-star offensive tackle. I think he's rated as the number 1 offensive tackle in the country out of Georgia. He came out and said about a month ago that Alabama was his leader. I didn't really buy into that. I think Alabama's behind Georgia. I think Georgia is the leader. I think Georgia's been the leader for a long time. Even, Georgia was a heavy favorite before Sam Pittman left. Well, Sam Pittman left, became the head coach at Arkansas, as we all know. Everyone said that Georgia was pretty much out. Well, Matt Luke came in for Georgia. I think he's kind of done a really good job of maintaining that relationship with Mims, and I think Georgia's the team to beat there. Now, will it matter? If Alabama gets JC Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer, 2 elite offensive tackles, maybe not, but I still think Alabama definitely still wants Amarius Mims. Don't get me wrong at all. If they can get Amarius Mims, Tommy Brockermeyer, JC Latham, absolutely forget about it. It's the best offensive line class in the country, no doubt about it. I mean, they're going, balls to the wall, recruiting those guys nonstop. Really want Emarius Mims in this class, and we'll see what happens. But in my opinion, I think he ends up going to Georgia, and I just think the Alabama talk of them being the favorite, I don't buy into it just yet. Let's see, kind of what happens once we get into the season. Does he decide to wait a little bit longer? As of right now, he's currently scheduled to announce a decision on October the 14th. That could change. We've started to hear a little bit of buzz that he could make a decision potentially this summer. Georgia signed a ridiculously good offensive line class last year. This year they've already got some offensive line commitments. Plus, it looks like they lead for T.J. Ferguson. Now, here's the thing about Emarius Mims and T.J. Ferguson. These are two of the top offensive linemen in the country, and they're both in the state of Georgia. As of right now, I think both of them are leaning Georgia. But if one of those guys commits to Georgia before the other, which is most likely to happen, it could affect the other. So let's say T.J. Ferguson commits to Georgia. Does that potentially affect Emarius Mims and send him, maybe to Alabama or vice versa? So obviously, it's something we'll continue to watch. But as of right now, I think both of those guys end up at Georgia. And like I said, I think JC Latham, Tommy Brockermeyer both end up at Alabama. All right, let's go to the next question here. All right, sorry, scrolling through. Where do I think Alabama will end up in the rankings in recruiting this year? Yeah, that's a great question. And it's an unknown question because, obviously the rankings are going to change. They're going to drastically change after this football season because guess what? There's no evaluations going on. So a lot of these recruits, a lot of those rankings are going to change significantly. And, it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see a lot of these guys because I think there's a lot of very good 3-stars out there that should be higher. I think there's a lot of 4-stars out there that should be higher. I think there's 5-stars who should be lower. So, a lot of these guys didn't get seen during the spring. So when the initial rankings came out, it's pretty much the same. I mean, there's been a few changes, not many. I keep seeing people, well, the rankings are going to update, they're going to change. Well, they're not going to change because, there's no reason for them to. There's, these guys aren't getting seen by anybody. It's just straight up film from their junior season, which was a big part of the early rankings. So there's not really anything to kind of go by. And that's why you're not really seeing the rankings a complete overhaul, at least on rivals.com. I don't know how the other sites are doing it, but I know on Rivals, you're not seeing just a complete overhaul on the rankings. You won't see that until after the season, after a lot of these guys go out and see these players in the fall at all-star games, stuff like that. So, we'll kind of see how the rankings go. If you look at the rankings right now, though, Alabama's in the top 5 in terms of the average star rating. Probably going to get a big one this week, in my opinion, JC Latham. That's certainly going to help. The guys they're still recruiting, all 5- and 4-star type players. So I got a feeling Alabama's class is going to be just fine. I'll be shocked if they're not in the top 5. Am I getting concerned, or you're getting, Michael, sorry, getting concerned that we're not in the lead firmly for Kool-Aid? Kool-Aid, for you guys that don't know, is my favorite name of a recruit, but he's the number 1 player in the state of Alabama out of Pinson Valley High School. Tremendous athlete, has been recruited in football and basketball, has offers football and basketball for many programs, including Alabama. Like I said, top player in the state of Alabama. He's visited Tuscaloosa 15 plus times. Just so many. He's visited Alabama just so much more than other programs. I think Alabama's got a great chance to land him. I predict Alabama will get him. In the end, I'd be shocked if he ends up going somewhere else. And there's been a lot of talk that LSU might be in the lead. I think LSU is certainly a threat. LSU's done a great job recruiting the state of Alabama. They've come in a little bit stronger in the state over the last few years. I think they kind of realize that Alabama's going into Louisiana and getting recruits. They can come into Alabama and get recruits. So, they're starting to recruit Alabama a little bit harder. They almost flipped DeMoy Kennedy last year. I mean, DeMoy Kennedy was strongly considering LSU, but stuck with his commitment to Alabama. But I think in the end, Kool-Aid ends up at Alabama. We'll be shocked if he ends up anywhere else. Looking to take any transfers. Well, Alabama does have 1 grad transfer in Carl Tucker. Who's with the team now, or I don't know if he's with the team now, if he's going to be with the team here in the next month or two. But transfers Alabama really won't look at anybody until after signing day. They didn't really look at or talk to Carl Tucker until after signing day, kind of figure out where the recruiting class is. So I wouldn't really be looking much into it right now. But once we kind of get through the season, kind of see who may be leaving, then Alabama starts looking around for transfers. All right. A lot of comments about Kool-Aid. Sorry, just kind of scrolling through here, guys. A lot of comments coming through. I appreciate it. Let's see. All right, are Brian Thomas and Christian Leary coming to Alabama? I mean, they could be. I mean, I think that there's certainly a chance for both of those guys. I mean, like I said, Alabama's trying to get at least two more wide receivers in this recruiting class. I've been mentioning Malcolm Johnson, Christian Leary, Brian Thomas. I think all those guys, have Alabama in their top two, top three. Just going to have to kind of wait and see what happens there. I don't think Brian Thomas is ready to make a decision. There's some talk that maybe LSU has jumped ahead of Alabama. Not sure if that's the case, but it could be. I mean, you get two elite receivers committed. I'm not saying it scares people off, but it certainly, maybe make people, make other schools, use that as an influence. Hey, we need you more than Alabama needs you. They've got these guys committed. You need to come here. So, we'll see how that works for some of these guys. But Alabama's certainly still in the race for both of them very strongly. All right. Is there a stud tight end out there? Crimson Woodworking. There's one guy that Alabama is very high on that's not, highly rated in terms of he's not a 5-star, he's not a 4-star. His name's Robbie Oots. He's out of South Carolina, Rock Hill, South Carolina. Nobody's really talking about him. I think Alabama fans are talking about him because they've seen the videos. They've seen our post about him on Bama Insider for the last couple months now. We've been talking about him. We've been previewing him. We've always said he's a tight end to really kind of watch. 6'4", about 240 pounds. Alabama's a big fan of him. The only problem is he hasn't visited Tuscaloosa yet, so they got to get him on campus this fall. For a visit, maybe for at least for an official, and kind of see where that goes. But as of right now, some of these other guys that are out there, Hudson Wolf, don't see him at Alabama. Thomas Fedone out of Iowa, he's kind of tweeted a lot about Alabama in the past, but came out with the top 6 a few weeks ago or last week. Did not have Alabama in his top 6. So I think the best bet is on Robbie Oots out of South Carolina. Now, there's always a chance that maybe Alabama can flip a tight end down the road. There's two guys that Alabama really likes. I don't want to say that they're going to flip them or even they've got a chance to flip them because we don't know if they're even going to visit yet. But Elijah Arroyo, who is committed in Miami, and also Jermaine Terry, who's committed to Cal. Both of those guys heavily recruited by Alabama. Two guys that Alabama would love to add. We'll see if those guys end up visiting. Maybe maybe they end up flipping them down the road. But that's the thing. We hadn't seen any flips to Alabama yet. We've seen obviously some guys who have flipped, or Drake May end up flipping from Alabama. Latrell McCutcheon ended up decommitting from Alabama. But Alabama tends to always get 2, 3, 4 guys who flip from other programs in the recruiting class. So we'll kind of wait and see who those guys are going to be in this recruiting class. All right. Keep on going here. Someone asked, when do I see Latham committing? I posted on our board, I'd been hearing that it was going to happen at least by Wednesday. So I think we're keeping an eye on tomorrow. Could it potentially go past then? Maybe it will. Ian Jackson a few weeks ago when he made his decision, we had actually heard it was going to be the week before, because that's actually when he recorded the video. I think he recorded the video on a Tuesday, and he told me, he said, probably going to happen on Thursday or Friday. Well, it went on into the next week and didn't happen until Thursday. So, we might see something like that. But, I'm keeping a very close eye on Wednesday to see what happens. Let's see. Sorry, just scrolling through, guys. All right, someone, Samuel Wilkinson has asked, is Alabama going to take a chance on Jalen White, running back out of Dothan, or are they going to try to get Donovan Edwards? Um, well, as of right now, here's the thing with running back. You look at running back position. Alabama did a tremendous job in the 2020 recruiting class. Signed 3 running backs. Signed Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, and Kyle Edwards. 3 outstanding running backs. You don't necessarily have to press for, you don't, I don't want to say press for a guy. They're pressing for a few guys, but you don't necessarily have to have a running back in this class. So what that means is Alabama's not out there offering, 20 running backs. They're offering, they've only offered a few guys so far. Kamar Wheaton out of Texas, Donovan Edwards out of Michigan. Now they've made a few other offers. Evan Pryor had an offer from Alabama, committed to Ohio State. Joseph McKay is an in-state back from Central High School in Phoenix City. He got offered earlier in the spring, but also think Alabama was hoping to see him in camp this summer. It may be kind of one of those things where they need to see him a little bit more. They need to see him in the fall. I think Kamar Wheaton, Donovan Edwards are the top 2 guys on Alabama's recruiting board at running back. And that's not in order. Those are just the 2 guys that they're heavily going after. If either one of those guys wanted to commit, they have a spot. I think Alabama's going to wait and see what happens with both of those guys. Let both of those guys make decisions, whether it's, a week from today or if it's, around signing day. I think they're going to wait it out, kind of see what happens with those guys. They miss on them. Hey, so be it. Maybe they go offer somebody else late, kind of like what they did with Josh Jacobs a few years ago. That worked out pretty well. But if they end up not signing a running back, I don't think they're going to sweat it too much because, like I said, they signed 3 guys last year, and they got a great stable of backs right now. Do I expect Jeremiah Williams to commit to the barn? Does that say barn? Sorry, my eyes are bad. Commit to BAM. I thought that was an R and an N. That's how bad my eyes are. Sorry, guys. I know we probably have an Auburn fan or 2 watching this tonight, but didn't mean to say the barn. Commit to BAM. I assume that means Bama. I think Alabama's got a chance. I think they're probably in his top 2. I think I'd be shocked if he goes out of state. I think he ends up staying in state. For those that don't know, Jeremiah Williams, 4-star linebacker from Ramsey High School. Love this kid. 6'4", about 230 pounds. Can run. He can play, just about any linebacker position. I think he's got a chance to really be a special player at the college level. Now, I think the biggest thing with Jeremiah Williams right now is, Alabama's linebacker numbers. They've got 2 right now. How many are they going to have by the time Jeremiah Williams gets ready to decide? Will they already have Kendrick Blackshire on board? Will they have Dallas Turner on board? Will they potentially have Keno Coate on board? I don't think they're going to take any more than 5. I've been saying 4, but I could see 5 squeezing in. He has a 100% definite spot in this recruiting class right now. But, as guys start making these decisions, and committing, it may be tough. A spot may not be available anymore. But, as of right now, Alabama is certainly wanting him to be a part of this class. He has a committable offer. But it's going to be a tight battle between Alabama and Auburn for him. And as of right now, he says he's going to wait it out. He wants to take all of his official visits before making a decision. But he's an in-state guy. Alabama, they have a very hard time turning down really good in-state players, especially including if they have a full position, full numbers at that position already. Excuse me. All right. Is Alabama starting to trend for Deion Colzie? No, not at all. They are, Deion Colzie, wide receiver out of Georgia, put out a top 10 the other day. Has Alabama in it. I really would not consider Alabama a top contender. I don't even know if they're, really heavily pressing for them at this time. There's a lot of other guys that are out there that they're heavily pursuing. With 2 wide receivers already committed. Still trying to get at least one more speed guy in this class, and like we mentioned, between Christian Leary and Malcolm Johnson, I think Xavier Worthy, he's certainly a guy that they would take, but I think he's going to announce for Oregon here in the next couple of weeks. And then you still have a lot of other guys that are out there that are high on Alabama's recruiting board. Troy Franklin out of, top wide receiver on the West Coast, just put Alabama in his top 4. You got to wait and see what he's going to do. Brian Thomas, Chris Hilton, two elite guys out of Louisiana, another guy out of Louisiana, Destin Payson. Those are three guys just from Louisiana that all have committable offers from Alabama, and all in the mix. So I certainly wouldn't put Colsey in the mix right now for Alabama. I think he ends up going somewhere else. Let's see. Do I expect Alabama to sign Damon Payne? Damon Payne, out of Michigan, one top defensive lineman in the country. I think he's rated number 28 overall in the Rivals 100. Yes, I'm predicting Alabama to land him. Now, I think one of the biggest things with him is just getting him back on campus. Now, relationship is there. He's been visiting Tuscaloosa since his freshman year, so it's not from lack of visits at all. But I think if he would have made it back to Tuscaloosa this spring, I think it'd have been a done deal. There's other programs that are still coming after him pretty hard that are in the mix. I think Alabama's in the driver's seat. Can they hang on to him, or not hang on to him, but hang on to that lead, all the way through? So we'll see when he gets ready to commit. But as of right now, I do predict him to sign with Alabama. All right. Tyler says she believes that Bama will get either Jeremiah Williams or Xavier Sorey. Don't think they'll get both. All right. Wesley Loman, what's the latest on Terrence Ferguson? Nothing earth-shattering. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a commitment happen sooner rather than later with him. Things have been kind of quiet on the Alabama front. Alabama's still heavily recruiting him. They certainly would love to add him, but as of right now, I am predicting him to Georgia. All right. Any room for oddball recruits this year? Punter or kicker, long snapper. Not going to see any not going to see any punter or kickers in this class, but potentially a long snapper. Rocco Underwood out of Lake Mary, Florida, has a scholarship offer from Alabama. Also has some other offers. I know Florida's offered him. He visited Alabama last fall. Kind of thought that Alabama was in the driver's seat. I think we're going to have an interview with him in the next couple of days on Bama Insider, so keep an eye on that. But I definitely think that Alabama would love to add him at the long snapper position. Now, hadn't really heard another name just yet. Now, if he ends up committing somewhere else, maybe they end up, offering somebody. But certainly looking to add at least maybe Rocco Underwood in this recruiting class at the long snapper position. All right, Rashad asked, who is Alabama pushing for at corner? Well, a lot of guys out there. There's a lot of junior college guys out there. They really like a lot. Kyrie Jackson, Jadarius Perkins, Dejon Warren. Those are three junior college cornerbacks that Alabama's heavily pursuing. They're all in the mix for. We've talked about Kool-Aid a little bit. Top player in Alabama, Jason Marshall. Out of South Florida, he's certainly another guy that they really like. There's a lot of guys that are DBs they're recruiting, that guys that can play safety or corner. That's the problem with not having camps this summer. You're not being able to bring a lot of these kids up, work them out, and make that decision. All right, you're definitely a corner. You're definitely a safety. A lot of these guys are just going to have to be signed and then make that decision a little bit down the road. So, but Jason Marshall, pure corner. Alabama's still recruiting Latrell McCutcheon, former commitment. I think it comes down to Alabama and Oklahoma for him. And there's a few other guys out there that they're, heavily in the mix for. So, I think Alabama's going to have a really good defensive back class. I'd be shocked if they don't. Jordan Hancock has committed to Clemson. I think Alabama could potentially get back in the mix there, but the problem with that is Hancock will have to decommit from Clemson in order to visit Tuscaloosa. So we'll see if that's even a possibility. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then Terrion Arnold. Someone asked in the thread about Terrion Arnold, one of the top athletes in the country out of Tallahassee, recruited as a defensive back, and he's one of those guys. Doesn't really mind where he plays. Will play wherever it feels like he's most needed. But he's probably another one of those guys that we felt like needed to attend camp to figure out for sure what position he's going to be. Now, he's an elite athlete, one of the top athletes, like I said, in the entire country. Has a football, basketball scholarship offer from Alabama. But Alabama kind of strictly recruiting him as a defensive back. Could he play receiver? Maybe, but I think defensive back's definitely his spot. But I still think Alabama's in the driver's seat there. I know there's been some Florida talk, but I really like Alabama's chances with Terry and Arnold. Am I a coach? No. um, let's see here. Any chance on Kamar Wheaton? Yeah, like I said, a little bit earlier, I didn't really dive into it too much. Kamar Wheaton, top running back in the country, out of Texas. Starting to hear some, at least some interesting chatter. I wouldn't say some positive chatter, but some interesting chatter that Alabama's in it a lot more than people think. Everybody's kind of assumed that he's going to end up going to Oklahoma or maybe Texas, but I'd keep an eye on Alabama. I think they could potentially be a dark horse in the race for him. I think they want to sign a running back. They're not necessarily saying it's a definite that they need to sign one, but they'd like to sign one if they can get Kamar Wheaton or potentially Donovan Edwards, and they would certainly be glad with one of those guys. A few years ago, Alabama signed 4 running backs in their recruiting class. Everybody said there's no way they're going to sign another one. Well, they ended up, the next year they signed, Bo Scarborough. So there's always a chance. We'll keep an eye on these running backs, but we'll see. Oh, I guess someone was asking if somebody else was a coach, not me. But let's see. Defensive line targets. A lot of defensive linemen out there. Alabama has Anquan Barnes committed right now. A lot of other guys that are out there, including a few guys in state. Tim Keenan from Ramsey High School. Still think Alabama ends up getting him. Lee Hunter is committed to Auburn. Alabama's still in the mix there. I think that he ends up, taking a visit to Alabama in the fall. Damon Payne, who we discussed earlier. I think Alabama's in the driver's seat there. Monkel Goodwine, another big time target that they're heavily going after. On the defense, we hadn't really talked about defensive ends this evening. There's some really good defensive end targets that are out there that Alabama's certainly at least in the top 2, top 3, 4 right now. Shamar Turner out of Texas, Chambry Jackson out of Orlando. You also have T.J. Bowlers. I think T.J. ends up probably going to Wisconsin, but maybe he ends up taking a visit to Alabama down the road. All right. Sorry, just scrolling through a lot of these questions. Sorry, it's scrolling up on me. I may miss some, so if I miss them, just ask them again. Let's see. Does Alabama have a realistic chance getting Troy Franklin? I don't know. I wish I could say yes or no on that one. I was surprised last week when he put out his top 4, and Alabama was still in. I figured with him not being able to visit Tuscaloosa during the spring, they would fall out. But I think that's a testament to the recruiting job that Holman Wiggins, the wide receivers coach, and Coach Sark have done recruiting him this far. Now, most people expect him to stay on the West Coast. I mean, his top 4 is Alabama, Arizona State, Washington, and Oregon. So everybody just kind of assumes he's going to end up staying on the West Coast. But we'll keep a very close eye on him, obviously, and see if he ends up making a visit to Alabama this fall. I think it's probably going to require a visit. If he decides to make a commitment this summer, I would predict somewhere else. But I think Alabama being in the top 4, I mean, they've got a chance. What is the latest on Dallas Turner? Dallas Turner, one of the top edge rushers out of South Florida. He had about 15 sacks as a junior. Could potentially be the best defensive player in the state of Florida. I know he's not ranked that way, but I think he's got the potential to be the best defensive player in Florida. But as of right now, predicting him to Alabama. I'm not really sure when he's going to make a decision. Could be this summer, could be after the season. He may end up deciding that he wants to take some visits. But I think Alabama's in very good position right now. Obviously, I think Georgia, Clemson are right there in the mix. And if he decides to wait it out and take those visits, you never know what may happen. But I think if he were to decide tomorrow, I think it would be for Alabama. Someone asked 4 or 5 wide receivers due to the transfers. Yeah, I still see it being four. Regardless of the transfers. If we get to January and Alabama has 4 wide receiver commitments and they still have a spot available to get another receiver, it all kind of depends on what's the biggest need. If they don't have enough defensive linemen and they still need to get some more defensive linemen, they're going to focus on that position. So it's all going to depend on where things stand. In late January, I don't see them having 5 wide receiver commitments before we go into the football season this year. I think they'd be really happy if they had 4 wide receiver commitments and then just kind of see what happens down the road. But it all kind of depends on the overall numbers a little bit further along. Let's see. Which defensive lineman do I expect Alabama to sign? Well, we went over some guys earlier that I really like Alabama's chances on. Obviously, they already have a big one in Anquan Barnes. I think they've got a great chance in landing Tim Keenan and Damon Payne, Monkel Goodwine. Those are some guys that could easily see in Alabama's recruiting class. They certainly want to get another really talented defensive end. Can they potentially get Chambry Jackson um, or Shamar Turner? Those are two guys out of state that they absolutely love. Would not be surprised if we see Shamar Turner in this class. That's kind of my wild card right now. A lot of people think he's going to stay out in Texas, but he did end up visiting Tuscaloosa back in February, and I think that was a big visit for him. So keep an eye on Shamar Turner out of Texas. All right, sorry, let me scroll through here. Do I see Alabama trying to get McCutcheon? Yeah, I definitely think so. Latrell McCutcheon, former Alabama commitment out of Texas. He's one of those guys that committed last summer that I didn't think was going to flip it. I kind of saw him as a leader in the recruiting class. He committed to Alabama so early. He didn't take any visits in the fall. Seemed like he was very solid with Alabama, and then all of a sudden he ends up flipping or didn't flip, but reopened his recruitment. Everybody thought he was going to end up going to Oklahoma. Did not commit to Oklahoma. I still think the Sooners are probably in the driver's seat, but Alabama's still there. Alabama's still chomping at the bit to get him. They're still in the mix. They're still talking to him just about every single day. And he's posted some tweets that certainly make it seem like Alabama is very high still on his list of favorites. So yeah, Alabama still wants him, and we'll kind of see what happens. But I definitely think that Alabama 100% still wants him in this class. I don't know. I don't think I think I may have forgotten to mention him earlier when talking about defensive backs. Let's see here. I keep seeing predict any news on Terran Arnold, but those may be some old comments because I know I've answered that a few times. Brockemeyer predictions still the same. I've been making these predictions for the last couple months now. I think Alabama. Let's see. Sorry, just kind of scrolling through here. Somebody saying Mason Smith is not coming to Bama. Yeah, I don't see that either. Mason Smith, top defensive lineman in the country, out of Louisiana. Yeah, I would be shocked if he ended up at Alabama, but we've been shocked before, so we'll see. Don't understand why McCutcheon would want to play defense for the Sooners. Let's see here. Well, they need some defensive help. Let's see. Coach Ballou, Dr. Ray are going to help Alabama big time. Yeah, I believe so. I think it's an eye-opening experience for these players, and I've seen a lot of positive comments. I've seen such an incredible hands-on approach, by the new strength staff. Talking to recruits, having FaceTime calls. I think that's kind of blown away a lot of these recruits. I mean, we talked to the Brockemeyers, who had an unbelievable conversation with those guys. Just about every single recruit that I've interviewed, and guys that have committable offers, guys that have been recruited by Alabama for the last several months. I think every single one of them has had at least a FaceTime call with the new strength staff, and everybody seems to just be blown away by these guys. Kamari Lassiter, in-state guy, in-state DB from American Christian. He's on Alabama's recruiting board. I think Alabama was going to have to probably miss on some guys for him to be able to commit. I think he's just a little bit behind a few guys right now. Alabama's certainly in the mix for some really elite guys in-state and out of state. So I think he's just going to have to wait for right now. Tyler Mason says, I think Jordan Gilbert comes to Bama. He's another defensive back that I forgot to mention earlier. There's tomorrow on Bama Insider, if you weren't on Bama Insider today, on BamaInsider.com on the recruiting board, I went down and listed every single offensive target, not just going through and saying, hey, these are the guys who have scholarship offers and who've been offered for the last 2 years by Alabama. No, we actually, go down and break down who is really being targeted by Alabama, who's really in the mix, who really has a committable offer. Broke down every offensive target today on BamaInsider.com. Tomorrow, going to break down the defensive guys. There's a lot of cornerbacks. There's a lot of defensive backs overall. So get on BamaInsider.com tomorrow, and it's going to be probably going to be a list of about 8 to 10 defensive backs that Alabama loves. Tyler Mason, pointed out Jordan Gilbert. You think he comes to Bama? Could very well be. Alabama really likes him a lot. What's the practice looking like? Well, I had no idea. I hadn't been out there. Don't cover practice. Don't cover the team. I cover recruiting. And hadn't been to any practices yet for recruits. But talk to Kyle, talk to Tony. Those are the guys that are covering the team. They'll be able to tell you, plenty of good scoop from summer workouts. All right, John Bosch. Does Bama have a chance at flipping Jalen Milroe or Luke Altmaier? Jalen Milroe committed to Texas, one of the top quarterbacks in the country from Texas. So everybody says, oh, well, there's no way a kid from Texas is going to flip from Texas to Alabama. Well, we saw Ashawn Robinson do that. Kids do that. Luke Altmaier from Starkville High School in Mississippi is committed to Florida State. I think the biggest thing is trying to get these guys back on campus in the fall. Now, Jalen Milroe is an interesting situation because he was heavily favoring Alabama last summer. There was a chance he was going to commit. Well, then Alabama ends up taking a commitment from Drake May. We know what happened with Drake. Drake ends up flipping from Alabama to North Carolina after signing day. Alabama trying to get back on Jalen Milroe. And I think he's still listening. He's still talking to the coaching staff, but still says that he's 100% committed to Texas. And, Luke Altmaier says that he's, respects Alabama, is very honored by his offer from Alabama last week, but still 100% committed to Florida State. So biggest thing is getting these guys on campus in the fall. That's really all you can do right now. Hope to get them on campus, which I believe they will. I believe Jalen Milroe will at least give Alabama a chance. I don't know yet about Luke Altmaier, but I think Alabama can get both of them on campus and then just go from there and see what happens. All right, Matthew Wilson. Man, takes me back. I had a good buddy that died a few years ago named Matthew Wilson. So I don't know if you're speaking to me from the grave or not, but Brockermeyer twins, JC, that's 3. Who's going to be the last 2 spots if those 3 are coming? That's a great question. There's a lot of guys that are out there that Alabama's, heavily in the mix for. Jager Burton out of Lexington. I think he has Alabama, very high on his list. Obviously we've talked about, 2 big guys in the state of Georgia and Marius Mims, Terrence Ferguson. But as of right now, I think those guys end up potentially at Georgia. I'd keep an eye on Jager Burton. I'd keep an eye on Eric Cade out of Texas, and I'd also keep a pretty close eye on William Griffin Parker out of Tennessee. Those are some guys that could potentially end up in this recruiting class, and guys that all those guys have committable offers. So those are the guys that I'm paying pretty close attention to as potentially filling out those last few spots if Alabama ends up getting JC Latham and the Brockermeyer twins. Do I think Bama will go undefeated this season? And if not, who will they lose to? Let me tell you something, David Kendall. I went to Alabama during the Mike Shula years. every year I said Alabama was going undefeated. It never happened. Our best year was 2005, 10-2 and a Cotton Bowl victory. So that seemed like a national championship to me when I was there. But Alabama certainly has the talent to go undefeated. Can they? I don't know. I mean, there's just so many uncertainties because of spring practice not happening, and Alabama being able to really train with the new weight staff and be with those guys during the spring. That was tough, but Alabama's got a chance, and I'm probably one of those guys that's always going to say, yeah, I think they'll go undefeated. Eli Long just asked about the QBs. I mean, really, we've talked about the guys. I mean, the only two guys that I think Alabama even has a shot with is Jalen Milroe and Luke Altmaier, who I just kind of broke down. There's nobody else really out there. And I know people keep throwing out different names. Oh, this guy could get an offer down the road. This guy, has contact with Alabama. Most of these guys don't have committable offers. There's really just a few guys, less than a handful of guys that have committable offers at quarterback from Alabama. And Drake May's committed to North Carolina. I don't see him flipping. Miller Moss just committed to USC. He's as of right now he's not flipping. Luke Altmaier is committed to Florida State. As of right now, he's not flipping. Jalen Milroe is committed to Texas. He says he's 100%, but Alabama's going to get a couple of these guys on campus, see what happens. Do they absolutely have to have a quarterback? Probably not. But the fact that they're still recruiting quarterbacks, the fact that they just offered a quarterback in Altmaier last week kind of shows that they want a quarterback in this class, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a top priority. Is Jason Marshall a Florida lock? It's a good chance he stays in Florida. He's one of the top cornerbacks in the country. Florida obviously does a great job developing defensive backs, but so does Alabama. And Alabama has a chance this year to really do some damage in the state of Florida and land some big time recruits from the Sunshine State. And they've already gotten a couple big ones from down there, and I think they can get some more. And he's certainly a guy that I feel like that they can land. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Trying to scroll through. Can Bama flip Dylan Brooks or Terrence Lewis? These are two guys that are committed to Tennessee, both linebackers. I don't see them flipping Terrence Lewis. He could end up going somewhere else. And I think somebody on Rivals wrote a story the other day about he's a potential flip candidate down the road. He's not flipping to Alabama. Dylan Brooks is an in-state linebacker, from Hanley High School. Alabama's still in communication with him, but like I kind of said earlier, a lot's going to depend on what the numbers look like a little bit down the road. Let's say Alabama gets Dallas Turner, Keno Coat. There's probably not going to be room. Or if they get Xavier Sorey in that group, it's probably not going to be room. Dylan Brooks has a committable offer from Alabama right now. He had one when he committed to Tennessee. Will he have one, 6 months from now if he decides to visit Alabama again? I don't know. So, it's obviously something that we'll, continue to monitor and see if he ends up taking a visit back to Alabama. But as of right now, I wouldn't bank on him flipping. Let's see. How many D tackles in this class? I think Alabama's going to try to sign at least 3, maybe 4. I think 3's almost a definite because you already have one commitment in Anquan Barnes. Alabama's going after Tim Keenan, who I believe they'll land. Damon Payne out of Michigan. That's 3 guys right there that I as of right now, I'm predicting all those guys to end up in Alabama in Alabama's recruiting class. So I think 4 is very realistic. If they can get 4 D tackles, 2 defensive ends, they'll be pretty set at the DM or at the D line position. Let's see. Do I think that Brock Meyer's dad joins the Bama staff if they commit? I don't see that happening. That's not happening at all. I don't believe. Vegas man, what's up? Any news on the wide receiver Deion Smith, who is committed to LSU? Yeah, I think probably fading a little bit. Just because of the other wide receivers that are out there. With Alabama having two wide receiver commitments, most likely going to land Christian Leary or Malcolm Johnson. That'll give them three guys. Who's going to be that fourth guy? I think he's probably fading just a little bit as of right now. I don't see him in this class. All right. I am down at the end, guys, on the question. So if I missed your question earlier, shoot it back in. 'Cause I'm at the bottom as of right now, and I know I've probably missed some. I know I've scrolled through. I know a lot of people asked several questions that were similar. So I hope y'all were listening when I was spitting it out there, my answer. So, but if you want to ask me again, I'll ask you again. Let's see. How about the athlete Kadarius Callaway? Oh, that's a good question. Kadarius Callaway out of Mississippi, committed to Mississippi State. Actually got offered during the spring. Another one of those guys that I think they need to get him on campus and just kind of see if they've got a chance there. Recruited mainly as a defensive back, and so I don't see him flipping as of right now. But get him on campus in the fall. Obviously, a lot of these guys, like I've been saying, Alabama's hoping to get a lot of these guys on campus during the spring or summer, and none of that happened. So, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle in terms of, when these guys are going to be able to get on campus. Are they going to be able to get on campus, in the fall? Is it going to be after the football season? Because obviously they're only going to have so many opportunities to visit campuses. So you're really hoping to get these guys on campus early in the fall as soon as possible. Josh asked, "What's the biggest position Alabama needs to address in this recruiting class?" In my opinion, well, before this recruiting cycle started, I said, biggest positions of need. First on offense, you got to get wide receivers. I mean, you're going to potentially lose 4 first-round NFL draft picks in 2 years. You got to get some talented receivers, and they're already off to a good start there. Offensive line. Big position of need. Only signed 3 offensive linemen last year. Get 5 offensive linemen this year, but get elite guys. Go after the best. See what happens. They're potentially going to add JC Latham this week. I think they lead for both the Brockermeyers. I think both those guys end up in Alabama's class. Can you potentially get an Amarius Mims or TJ Ferguson or a Jager Burton? These are some of the top guys that they're going after. On defense, the defensive line, in my opinion, you can never have enough defensive linemen. I mean, Alabama fans know Alabama was, just kicking butt every single weekend. We were seeing, 8, 9 defensive linemen, rotating in and out every single game. And we hadn't seen that many defensive linemen rotating in and out. There may be 5 or 6, but, back in the day when, you saw, guys like, Deron Payne as a second teamer, or Dalvin Tomlinson, or those guys. I mean, Alabama has had some unbelievably talented defensive linemen, and I think you can never have enough defensive linemen. But inside linebacker, key position, I think Alabama's done a great job there so far because they have 2 guys currently committed. Not necessarily inside linebackers, but they could be inside linebackers. They're recruited mainly as linebackers. Kind of figure out once they get on campus where they're going to end up playing in Deontay Lawson and Ian Jackson. I think they get Kendrick Blackshire, and we'll kind of see what happens with some other guys that are out there. But inside linebacker and then cornerback. Cornerback also a big position to need. David Sprinkle has asked, who is the next commit? My prediction is JC Latham. Let's see. Tywan Malone. Tywan Malone, I don't have a good feel on him just because I don't really know him. Hadn't really talked to him. He's one of those guys that doesn't really do a lot of interviews. And Alabama's in his top 13. Let's see where Alabama stands when he narrows that list down a little bit more. Does Alabama potentially make his top 6, top 5? If they can, then they've got a chance. But don't know a ton about him just yet. How tall is Ian Jackson? I think he's right at about 6'2". He may be a tad bit under 6'2" right now, but I know they measured him at Alabama's junior day. I think he was just a hair under 6'2", but he was about 215 pounds. What's the news on Brian Thomas? He came out with the top four, I think a week or so ago. Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Georgia. Now he hasn't visited A&M or Georgia, so it's going to be an Alabama LSU battle until he at least visits those schools. Yeah, we've been saying Alabama for the longest time. There's some chatter that it could be LSU now. That LSU may have pulled ahead. Maybe after Alabama picked up a few wide receiver commitments, but I still think Alabama's got a great chance to land Brian Thomas. Not sure when he's going to make a decision. Now we've heard some mixed things. We heard probably about I would say a month or so ago that he was going to wait until the Under Armour game to announce the decision. In the last couple of weeks, I've started to hear that maybe he decides before the season starts. If he decides before the season starts, I'm not. I don't know which direction he's going to go. I just know it's going to be Alabama or LSU. What about linebacker Kendrick Blackshire? Do I think Alabama can get him? Yes, I do. I believe Alabama's in the driver's seat. I believe Alabama gets him, and I believe he could potentially be Alabama's next defensive commitment. I'll put it like that. What about Emeka Egbuka, top wide receiver in the country? Alabama's not. I don't think they're even in his top five. There's a lot of talk about him going to Ohio State, so I think that's where he's going to end up going. But I don't pay him. I really try to pay attention to the guys that Alabama's seriously involved in. Obviously, there's a lot of those guys. I mean, obviously, y'all been watching the show. We've talked about several guys that Alabama's in the mix for that they can land. So some of the guys that Alabama's not really in the mix for, I don't know a ton of information on, but I know Alabama's not really in the mix for him, and I've heard a lot of Ohio State for him, so we'll go Ohio State. All right, guys, we're right at an hour. I think that's going to be it for the evening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to go back and watch it all, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So go back and check it out. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, search Bama Insider, hit subscribe. You'll be alerted anytime we pop up. We post a video, anything like that. So I certainly enjoyed talking to you guys. Thrilled that y'all come on here, enjoy the show, watch it, shoot in questions. And if you're not a member of BamaInsider.com, I certainly encourage you to join our site. I mean, you can come on BamaInsider.com right now. Ask me a question that you're asking me in this show. Ask me anytime, and I'm always on there. Sometimes I'm on there at 3 a.m. in the morning answering questions. So we got a great community over there, great team, great network. Love to see you guys over there. We'll see you on our YouTube channel next week. We'll probably get back to our regular call-in show next week. So if anybody wants to call, we'll talk to you over the phone as well. But thank you guys so much for joining. And if you have any other questions, like I said, come over to BamaInsider.com right now. Be happy to answer your questions on the Bama Insider recruiting board. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. Check out our site. See if you enjoy it. I think you will. And love to have you over there as part of our community. But hope you all have a great evening, great rest of your week, and roll tide.